Final reader this evening will be Marcela Sulak. Her book, Decency, just recently came out from Black Lawrence Press. Of it, Joy Katz said, "Can a book that's deeply ethical also be charming?" It turns out, yes. Sulak's geopolitical borders may be porous, but her wit is a taut wire. There is a delight all through this collection, Gertrude Stein's violent delightfulness. This poet strews coins, corn, meteor showers, and slender men in bright shirts. She also thinks through the most brutal things we do to each other, as lovers, as nations, as humans. Sulak's gold isn't adornment. It is Marianne Moore's unfalsifying sun. I should also mention that Marcela recently edited this anthology, Family Resemblance, an anthology of and exploration of 8 hybrid literary genres. And if you're in Austin on Saturday, there'll be a reading from this book here. At what time?
7, I think.
7?
Yeah.
Who will be reading?
Julio Ortega, Joy Layden, and Julie Wademan. I think I'm forgetting last name.
But if you can't wait till then, you can buy it.
Thank you for putting this together, Cecily, and thanks for letting me crash the party. And Joe, thanks. This is wonderful. I've never read underneath the chandelier before, so this is really fun. This is the opening poem to the book. It's called Ecclesiastes, from a section called Katamon, Jerusalem. I've been living in Tel Aviv for the last 6 years, and I'm from Texas, and it's really weird to live in a place where you always feel like you're living multiple lives at the same time. You can never just live one life. You're living many years at the same time. You're living many existences. You're living many identities at the same time. And so most of these poems are trying to grapple with the different identities and histories and timelines that run through them. Ecclesiastes. It's so nice to be pretty and wearing polka dots on a swinging dress with a small cinched waist, pushing a blue-eyed child through the trade winds in her pram. The trees are swaying, and on the bench below them, an old woman looks up through the boughs to a parcel of clouds, and when she sees us, she smiles. When we pass, she stands up and begins with her Zlate moja, my golden child, and she reaches to touch our cheeks, and her hand stays outstretched, and she's asking for just a little of our gold, something for the bus or for lunch, and I reach into my tiny purse and drop some coins, since her hand is now the meter that turns us in our slot. And let's see. Stick with those. Yeah. This one is, I'm a translator as well, and this one is called Translation Depends Not on What Must Be Included, but on What Must Not Be Left Out. And it's after Idra Novi. You enter the country next door from under the stone church of the Redeemer subway exit. No pork Chinese restaurant and Mr. Chicken flank the avenue, both sides strictly halal. The immigrant stories conclude happily thus far. Love at first sight ends in marriage. The NGO administrator can finally quit the dead-end job and be a stay-at-home mom lobbying to remove the ice cream truck from the park. The baby sons resemble their mothers or else their paternal grandfathers. Slender men in bright shirts lean against shiny, long black sedans, smoking cigarettes. It is both the spawning grounds and the death place of fiction. The little ones learn to become miniature predators themselves until they encounter others of their own kind. An aggregation is called a school. Visitors must check their own children at baggage claim. They are either conveniently or conspicuously bilingual, depending on their income level. The average rainfall is silver and distributed equally throughout the seasons. What the Bible really says, instructors stand in neat skirts beside their docile placards, waiting for you to ask them to dance. There is no binary opposition. Identity is where and what time you stand to put your makeup on, relative to the points of time and space of those around you. Their handfuls of brightly colored plastic, their recession so slow you don't notice it at first. Polyphony is certainly possible too. Indeed, it is the preferred method of communication, for the birds are skybound at present. The inhabitants are friendly and curious, and the military carry their cameras carelessly with the safeties off and the barrels aimed haphazardly at everything. And this poem is called Decency. It's based in Texas. I grew up on a rice farm on the way to Houston. At the end of our marriage, I remember the raccoons of my childhood that came to steal our corn. The king snakes asleep in a barrel of feed, nipped by my coffee can scoop. Then his smooth brass coils around my wrist, and how in panic I took a BB gun and shot him, and how my father whipped me good for killing a decent, harmless creature, and how my brother set the spring-triggered steel-jawed trap for the coons in the dim light of the barn floor. My cat stepped into it and caught her paw, and how she howled, her desperate twist, and when I bent to release her, she bit my finger, and it swelled 10 times its normal size. How that's what happens, my father said, when you touch an animal in pain. I'm taking Stefania's method and just reading in order of the book, but I'm skipping some. Okay. In grappling with the history of the place, I started to write syllabics. I loved it's so difficult to order chaos. And syllabics gave me a way to impose some kind of order without allowing the sound or the rhythms or rhymes to get in the way. And so the order really is just more for me than for you, but you should know they're written in syllabics. I had to learn Hebrew when I moved, and so I was amazed at how all words are made up of 3 roots. There are no vowels in them, and depending on how you conjugate them, they can mean various things. So, avera means violation or crossing. In Venezuela, we could whack the heads off these empty wine bottles, plant their bottoms in fresh cement so their jagged teeth would flash between the rich and those of the poor, unemployed by the rich. If we were still in Germany, there'd be a pragmatic plastic bin labeled colored glass, and there they'd sleep it off, till someone hauled them to the rubber belt. They'd ride for free, be scrubbed and dried. They'd open their mouths and be filled again. If we were still in Austin or South Philly, we'd be laughing so hard when they fell, we'd gather their shards, and with mirrors, because the more the merrier, and plastic glow-in-the-dark saints, we'd make the guys who piss against the walls at night something nice to look at. As Henry Ford said, art should be something for every day. Most workers on large public projects in Mesopotamia got 1 liter of beer a day. On the occasion of Queen Puabi's death, her daily allotment, 6 liters, with silver, gold, and lapis straws, cased with marsh reeds. 12 chambermaids, 5 male armed guards, and 2 groomsmen were thrown a banquet to die for, literally. Had I been there, I would have looked longest at the rams, rendered in gold, silver, and lapis lazuli, each raised on hind legs, nibbling a shrub. Coffee? At some point that night, I would have dipped my cup into a copper pot like everyone else and drunk it. The effect was irreversible. It's true, my mother's angry children made me keep their vineyards while my own I had not kept, but lately I find myself possessed of stone jars full of sweet and of breath that hovers just above the earth a while. When I taste it, I don't know what is earth and what is air and what is water, what is fire, who my mother's angry children are, where never ends, where I began, and what Puabi did with the key to the death pit where the banquet was. The only thing worse than being unloved is being loved above all others. Ein bet resh, pronounced avera, means violation, means moving, since at a certain point it's hard to stop. Moving from one word to the next, because ein bet resh, pronounced Ivrit, is language, or Hebrew, and a state of existence if you happen to be Avram, the first Hebrew crossing a river from his and Queen Puabi's hometown in Dacanan. Since then, every age of wonder has its own body of water, and the inconsolable who discover that what they crossed was sometimes only the usual kind of water, which is why Baudelaire said, always be drunk. Be drunk means be emptied or else filled, almost all the way, never at the same time. A tooth in the mouth of the Gulf of Mexico, my grandfather reminds me of Noah. First thing upon disembarking, his native village obliterated, he planted himself a vineyard too. And let's see. This is the casting of lots, and it's about the scroll of Esther during Purim. It's not that, it's reflecting on it. So, dear Ahasuerus, it's 11:30 a.m. and my number is 186. I feel the lack of communion, striving for a higher purpose in this government assistance office, and it is beyond sadness and feet and the distance of aircraft and tires and inner tubes on turgid rivers in midsummer with aluminum cans of beer. It's not just the ones who pick up discarded numbers from the floor and say they've missed their turn. The flower-selling prepubescent children sniffing glue in paper bags outside the margins of the magazine I'm reading remind me of the laundry I hung up that must be dry by now, filled as they are with warmth and wings and snapping. When God withdraws, we must all breathe a little harder. And one more syllabic poem. This is Union. Two small onions fill the eye sockets of Ramses IV, who lay stiff as if awake in the rusty crook of the Nile's arm, which, when viewed from an aerial photo, resembles a scar in the Valley of the Kings. Night falls swiftly there, and artists were assigned inspirations that endured longer than their lives. Precision carving tools and strips of cloth combed from local weeds. Onions in chest cavities attached to the soles of the feet, in the pelvis, along the bald legs, molded in the ears, poised the expectant body for its next breath in a bold, pre-furnished afterworld. They were red-skinned, the same color as Ramses IV's legendary hair. Their name came when the onion-shaped letter O slipped into union. A union is something invisible. Under investigation, it falls apart. But it's somewhat comforting to me that even loss is never completely effaced. After Pompeii burned, the onion bulbs remained as cavities beneath the scorched ground. Now, draw me into your mouth and blow me out, because I don't want to be immortal, but thoroughly spent. And I'll end with a little prayer poem called Holy. If to be holy means to be set apart, then keep the wound open until it no longer resembles a wound, but a constant tenderness. In marriage, it applies to women, what men make of them. The difference between a kept woman and a wife is contractual. Every woman wants to be her own agent, but holy, you must lose an integral part for the sole purpose of not gaining anything in return. This is called grace, a permeable emptiness. Keep it open, keep it embryonic. It is the boudoir of the ego. This is a kind of prayer, or even prayer's definition. Thanks so much.